Okay, today we're going to be doing the M52 common problems, misfires and rough running codes, as I know a lot of you guys are having this problem. But before we get into that video, I just want to thank a load of you guys. As many of you guys are aware, we reached the 100k mark. 2021 is going to be massive, and I am looking to get this channel to 200k by December, and that is my plan, and that is what I intend to do. As many of you guys are already aware, I have the ambition to do that. I'm very ambitious with what I want and my goals, and I haven't stopped since the day I actually started YouTube, as many of you guys who have been following me from day one have noticed. We are also now verified, so we are the official BMW Doctor channel, which I'm very, very proud about. I was worried about someone else coming along and taking the name, but it now is my name, and I am now known and officially known as the BMW Doctor globally. So thank you guys for watching. We are going to get onto this video, and thank you so much for the 100k and making this channel what it is and making it the one and only BMW Doctor channel and making me who I am today.
But goddamn, get it done, will ya? Woo. When I blow up now, everybody's so unusual with it. Shit. But said times in his rhymes, cause his memories. We running through New York, so you.
Okay, so as you see here, this is the N52 engine, and today we're going to be going over all the things that cause a rough idle and rough running on your BMW N52 engine. So the first thing that causes your rough running and can cause a rough idle dramatically is the Vanos solenoids, which sit right down there. As you'll see, they're bolted into the head, which go to the Vanos adjusters inside, which keep the oil flowing to the adjusters and to all the Vanos units inside the engine. Now, they are known to fail, and you will get a 2898 or 2897 code. Clean them, does not work, do not even think about it. Replace them. If you do not replace them, what will end up happening is you'll end up with rough running to the point they cannot cope any longer, and your car will just completely shut down, as well as a very, very bad rough idle, and you'll feel the car down on power. They are the first thing and most common thing a lot of people overlook and don't even realize that will cause your rough running codes on that specific part. The next one for the rough idle and rough running is the CCV, which sits underneath here. It connects from the valve cover, comes round, and if you've got the M52 engine like this with the silver cover, you'll have the ball that it connects to, and connects all up to the manifold as well, to the Disas and to the PCV heater. Now, if you've got the black valve cover one, you'll have a Y pipe which comes off the valve cover, and it goes into two sections to the manifold as well. Now, they're not cheap, but they will cause vacuum leaks, and they will cause rough idle as well, especially if they're broken. And if you have had the manifold off by any means to replace anything, you have to buy a new one, because they will be brittle and they will crack. Now, these ones with the silver engine cover have heaters on them for the CCV units. Now, what ends up happening, because they're used all the time in the freezing cold, they end up becoming brittle from warming up all the time. And there's an electronic box that sits on the back of the manifold. They do become brittle and they do crack. I am going to be showing you guys a lot of this later on, how to remove it, what ends up happening, and so on and so on. There's a lot of this I want to be showing you guys, and you guys should be excited, because I've got something good to come in with the M52 engine, and trust me, you guys are going to be enjoying it. So that's another one you guys need to look for. The next one on these that can cause rough running and rough idle is the ignition coils underneath. A lot of people won't notice it, and as I've said many times, BMW is very good for covering up misfires, especially with ignition coils, because there's 6 cylinders. If one goes out, you don't sometimes detect it. It could be on its way out, but it's when it usually fully fails, it will shut that cylinder down, and that's when people will notice it. And they usually notice it when their car is under strain, either going uphill or putting pressure on the engine itself. That's when they'll notice the misfire. Now, if it throws a check engine light, replace all 6 ignition coils if you find that the ignition coils are bad. I would strongly advise as well to replace the spark plugs, because on these engines, as many of you guys always ask me every day, these cars like to burn oil. It's just the way they are, because of the tolerances and because of how high the temperatures run on these engines. So the piston rings, you know, end up losing their seal, and it ends up burning through and getting inside, and it ends up coating your spark plugs. Now, when that happens, your car will not run right. So I do my best advice is to replace your spark plugs and your ignition coils at the same time, to make sure you don't have that issue. But if you do have that issue, scan the car and find out what cylinder is actually misfiring and what coil it actually is that's actually misfiring, so you can actually replace it. And as I said, make sure and be sure to replace all 6, because it's very important that you replace them. The next one is when you take off the valve cover, which a lot of people don't know, is this ground strap right here. Now this ground strap is the ignition circuit to the ignition coils. If you remove this and don't rebolt it up, you'll have no power. What it's doing is, because it's not grounded, it's not sending a signal to the power pack here, which runs the ignition coils, because there is no ground. A lot of people end up taking it off and completely forgetting about it, and it will not work, or their car won't fire up. A lot of people end up breaking it and don't even realize it's there, but it's very easy to buy a new ground strap from anywhere and you can just put a new one on. But without it, your car will not start, especially if you remove it. That will cause your car not to start either. The next one on these, which sits under here, is the Valvetronic Motor. Now, they don't have a tendency really to go on the M52 engine. It's more common on the N62 that they go out on than the M52 engine. Now, they do go, but it's very, very rare, and I haven't seen one actually fail. But if that goes out, without that, your car will not start and will not run. You'll also end up with very, very bad rough running, because the Valvetronic motor is used to open and control the valves for the variable lift, and therefore it won't be turning when the computer wants it to. It won't be backing and forwarding on the actual springs for the Valvetronic. Therefore, you'll end up with rough running and very, very bad rough idle, because the Valvetronic is used to keep obviously the car running smooth and obviously to make the power when you need it. Now the eccentric shaft sensor is another one that sits under here, and you guys would have seen my video, I'll link it up here regarding that sensor. One of the guys asked me to do that, I went and done that. If that goes out, that will cause your car not to start, and that will cause very, very bad rough running, especially if oil gets in the engine. I would advise you to make sure you check that, because that is a common cause of a lot of people's failures and rough running and high miles per gallon, especially getting high miles per gallon, because that goes out. And a lot of people, it goes very undetected because it is quite expensive still, and to be fair, you'd have to remove the valve cover to get access to it. And obviously if you're going to be doing a valve cover, it does make sense to do it. It is a bit risky because you've got inside here, you've got 2 bolts that connect the eccentric shaft sensor to the eccentric shaft, and they're very fiddly bolts to get out and actually turn back in as well. Again, I have got something coming where I'm going to be showing you guys all these things on the M52 engine, and it is going to be the black valve cover one for a lot of you guys. But again, they will cause rough running and rough idle. The next one on these, which a lot of you are already aware, are the Disa valves. Now, as you see, there's one, and if we look down here, there's another one just at the back right there, as you'll see it bolted to the manifold. Now, if they stick or stick open or lose their flap because they're not closing when the manifold wants it to, or the DME is requesting it, what will happen, it will be causing extra air to go into the manifold, which shouldn't be going in unless the DME requests it, or unless you're actually pushing your foot down. But what ends up happening is the flap gets stuck and the motors end up going, which is normal. You'll end up with the flap sticking and causing air to get in, and it will cause rough run and rough idle, and you'll feel it as you're sitting in the car. It's a common problem, and these do break. They are quite cheap now, and you can get them very cheaply. I would advise to check them and replace them. I've told you many times, remove your manifold and check these, because they have got a tendency to come off, and a lot of people do find them in their manifold. Remember, you've got 2, even a little one down there, but it's usually prone for the big one to fail. It gets oiled up from where the CCV ends up rupturing, and oil ends up getting into the manifold, and it ends up causing oil to get onto here. It seeps through into the motor, destroys the flap on it itself, and destroys the Disa flap. I haven't actually seen any get into combustion chamber lately, but they can do if left long enough and left unattended. They will do that. So my best advice is to check that and replace it. The next one on these that will cause rough running as well and rough idle is the MAF sensor, which is right there. They ain't very known to go, but they can go. But if they end up failing, what will end up happening, it won't be reading the proper air inside going into the engine. Therefore, it will end up causing a rough idle, cause the engine to stall. It will cause a low power. It can cause a lot of different things. And if you unplug it and find it's working, it could be many things still. It could end up being a vacuum leak where metered air is getting in after the MAF sensor. Therefore, it's best to always check. But obviously these can go like any car, and I'm not going to sit here and say they won't go. They can go and will go. You just have to be careful. And like I say, the best thing is to check with ISTA or another scanner to see what your fault codes actually are. But do be careful with that, because you know it's probably not cheap either to buy. Still, I wouldn't know because I haven't replaced one of them. The next one up here is the MAP sensor, which is the manifold absolute pressure sensor. You'll see it at the back right there. That's the manifold absolute pressure sensor. Now, when people take this manifold off, you would have seen in my previous videos I've explained, people have a tendency to break that without realizing it's there, because look how hidden it is behind all the cables. You don't even notice it's there, and they'll just take the manifold off and forget that. Now, the manifold absolute pressure sensor is obviously when it's got all the air inside it, because obviously it's got Disas as well, is to read the absolute pressure inside the manifold constantly to make sure it's not overpressurizing, which is going to end up damaging the cylinders or damage the engine. That's the whole idea of it. Now, if that's not working, that will cause rough running, that will cause high fuel consumption as well. It basically works in turn with the MAF sensor, so be sure to actually check that as well, because that can actually cause rough run and rough idle, and that can end up going bad for you as well, especially if you take the manifold off and not realize it's there and end up ripping it off. Now, the one final one, which I know a lot of you guys probably know about or are aware, is the update for these engines. If you haven't had your car updated to the latest firmware on your M52 engine, make sure to do it. The firmware corrects a lot of the rough idle issues. I do it for many people remotely around the world for this engine, and I've done it for loads of people, and I'm sure a load of people will come on here and actually verify that. I've updated a lot of different people, and their engines have run perfectly ever since with no issue. The update rectifies a lot of the stuff on this engine, especially the rough running. So be sure to actually make sure to check if you've got it updated. If you ain't got it updated, it is something I do. Obviously it's not free, but that alone is what made me who I am today. And as I said, if you do have that issue, update your engine as well if it has never been updated, because it is crucial. The update rectifies a lot of the issues that you could replace everything and still have the rough idle. The firmware update rectifies that, because as I said, BMW over the years, they de-restrict the engine, because when the engines are new, they need to make them as emission friendly as possible. So they've got a lot of restrictions in place, and a firmware update lifts all that after 3 years. Therefore, they don't have to meet the emission regulations to be the most healthiest engine that BMW has ever produced any longer. So just be sure to actually get your engine updated. And like I say, if you guys want to know more about it, you can always comment in the box below and let me know if you're interested in it, or you ain't had your car updated, and we can go through that. Okay guys, so as you've seen there, we've just gone over all the N52 rough running and rough idle symptoms on this engine. Now, I have gone over a lot of them with you, and these are the most common ones on this engine that you will face for the rough running and rough idle on the M52, be it the silver engine cover or the black one. It does not matter. These are all the symptoms you guys will experience. Now, as you heard me say about the update, now the update does rectify a lot of the issues, and this is what made me who I am still today on YouTube, for actually coming and showing you guys about that it does rectify the issue. A lot of people didn't believe me until they actually saw it, and it does rectify the issue. This is something I ended up finding out, and I sent YouTube crazy for it, for the fact about the update. And these cars, a lot of people didn't think they needed updating. It wasn't so big in the US. This is something we do here in the UK and EU. In the US, everyone started updating their engines like they knew anything about it. It was all thanks to me and my knowledge bringing this to YouTube about updating the car that rectified a lot of issues, be it on the M52 and the N54 as well. So there you have it, guys. As I said before, I just want to thank you guys for the 100k. Thank you for making my channel what it is today. I am now officially the BMW Doctor, and we are the official BMW Doctor channel, and you guys have made me who I am today. I'm very grateful for all of you that stuck around and managed to get me to the 100k. You guys share my videos. You don't know how much it means to me. We've had the haters. I've never let them bug me, never let them get to me. I carried on, pushing to the top. And you guys are what drove me to #1 and got me the biggest videos ever. And like I said, you know, no other channel's ever done that, no BMW channel. We passed a lot of people, and I'm very happy for where we've come in such a short space of time. We ain't even been doing this 2 years until next month in February, and we're already at 100k. It's been an amazing experience. I've loved every minute of you guys, and I've got a lot more to come. 2021 is our year. I'm telling you guys that right now. And if you have got M52, you're gonna love, and I mean love, what I have in store. I've got a lot in store for you guys, especially with that engine. We are gonna be doing a full tear down and rebuild of the M52 engine, especially on this channel. So thank you very much for watching, guys. It's the BMW Doctor here. and goodbye.